What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 153 of Tablesetters, where we cover everything happening across the world of baseball. And as you guys have come to know, tonight's episode is a quick mini reaction pod as the 2026 WBC moves into a very dramatic stage. And over the last 24 hours, it completely reshaped itself into what has been a very amazing tournament, into a lot of the improbable. And of course, we're going to open the conversation with the story that's taken over the Classic, has been Italy. And I know everyone's looking at the story that we saw of Venezuela upsetting Japan, but we want to talk about the undefeated run, the historic trip to the semifinals, and for a team that has gone from being outside the spotlight to suddenly becoming one of the defining narratives of that everyone will remember from this 2026 campaign. Of course, we're going to move into, as I mentioned, Venezuela eliminating the defending champion Japan, and then we'll set the table for the semifinal everyone has been waiting for, the Dominican Republic versus Team USA, two rosters that are absolutely stacked with superstar talent, and a matchup that could very well decide the direction of who's going to be facing or maybe holding the crown at the end. But before we dive in, a quick reminder to support our show. Make sure you're following at Tablesetters Pod on Instagram and also on X. If you've been enjoying the podcast, if you can, it would be so kind of you to take a moment, leave a 5-star review wherever you listen. It really helps more baseball fans discover the show, and it goes a very long way in the algorithm. We also have a lot coming up as we move closer to opening day. Our division previews are already up and running, and they're going to be rolling out over the next few episodes. If you missed them, go back in the archive and check out our AL West and NL West previews. And coming up next, we'll be breaking down the AL Central and NL Central as we get everyone ready for the 2026 MLB season. So stay tuned for all that. Devin and I will be back very soon with all that, but we appreciate your support, trying to give you guys all the content you guys deserve here. Of course, covering fantasy baseball and college baseball. WBC comes every 3 years, so we want to make sure we are appreciating it and giving it all the love it deserves. But we're going to hop into our opening say and talk about everything that's happening around the WBC. We're going to open up with Italy. All right, as we said, the World Baseball Classic has produced really a lot of surprises, and few developments have been as improbable as this Italian team, and they've been just fascinating to watch and what they've been able to put together. So as you guys saw earlier today, an 8-6 victory over Puerto Rico in the quarterfinals at Daikin Park in Houston, and they advanced to the WBC semifinals for the first time in history. They improved to 5-0 in the tournament and cemented itself in a lot of ways the most unlikely story of this WBC in a tournament that has had a lot of unlikely stories as well. And the way this game unfolded kind of explains how they've done it since the beginning. All 5 wins sort of have their own DNA all over it. And for a team, let's be honest, they entered this tournament outside the spotlight. They've suddenly become one of the defining narratives that everyone that looks back at the 2026 edition of the WBC, I think everyone right now is going to think of the espresso shots and the things we've seen with Team Italy, no matter how this ends, whether they're able to get past Venezuela and go into the finals, or whether it ends against Venezuela. I think everyone's going to remember very fondly. I don't want to say house money, because that might be something that they don't want to hear. But for the Italian team, there's something that is very impressive about this run, 5-0. And what's even more impressive for me watching this game, and of course, they took hold, all the spotlight of the baseball world was on this before we moved into Japan and Venezuela later in the night. We watched Puerto Rico have this statement in the beginning of the game. Willie Castro lit off the game with the home run, blasted it right over the Crawford boxes. And as I mentioned in the preview, if you guys checked out episode 152 prior to this, I was discussing that Puerto Rico's offense has not been the reason they've been there. In fact, they've been quite anemic as far as offense goes, and their pitching has gotten them to this point. And the offense, when you're watching this, like, okay, it's going to be one of those days where Puerto Rico's offense finally was able to do this. And you can look at their team. We've discussed the insurance issues, that Lindor couldn't be there and Correa couldn't be there because of the injuries. They would not be covered. And you got to also take into account Javi Baez, who was unallowed to play because of the fact that he failed the marijuana test, and those are international rules and all that. So they're down 3 very explosive bats, and there's still a lot of bats and a lot of bop in that lineup. Just you wonder what could have been if Lindor, Baez, and Correa were all there. But we watched Willie Castro getting in there and doing what he did, igniting a very heavily Puerto Rican crowd inside the retractable roof stadium, and they went off. They were very excited watching this, and this gave Puerto Rico the start they wanted. And the atmosphere we've been discussing across all these ballparks of the different franchises, or fan bases, I should say, of a home game. And their fans brought out the drums and the constant energy to this matchup. And that's something that Manny Machado has talked about. A lot of players have come out and talked about, really all these different areas that a lot of Major League Baseball fan bases can take and bring from this international flavor of we're seeing in baseball. And it's a World Cup atmosphere. You've heard Sean Spradlin say this. You've heard a lot of people discuss this. There's a lot to be said about how we're looking at just the electricity in March of these competitive games. And from the beginning, I think really what we're taking from Italy as a team, they've been aggressive. And that has been their offensive identity since the start of this tournament. And that carried them all the way through pool play, eventually bringing them here at 4-0. After getting this win, they're now 5-0. And they play this game in a sound way. And when we saw them play the U.S., I think a lot of people were surprised it was an upset. Everyone was pinpointing it as that. When you watch the way they play baseball, it's just this very sound team that does the small things right, and they get the big hits when it matters. And the opening blast for Puerto Rico, you thought it would set the tone. What was very important is with Seth Lugo on the mound, this guy who's a veteran pitcher, we saw Italy take into the box, not looking at this as an insurmountable lead, of course, because they've come back in the past. Italy erupted for 4 runs in the bottom of the first inning. They chased Seth Lugo after he recorded just 1 out, and the rally began with Vinny Pasquantino. Who else? He's Italy's captain. He's been their emotional leader throughout this tournament. He drove in a run with an RBI single. Dominic Canzone followed with another run-scoring hit. And then Jack Caglione added an RBI single of his own, continuing the pressure. And that's something Italy has done, like we said before, in the 4 other games and continuing in this game. 5 straight games of just putting pressure on the opposing defense and also on the pitcher. And we watched them finish off the inning. JJ DeRazio had a sac fly. Now they have a 4-run inning, flipping the scoreboard from this 1-0 Puerto Rico lead that they thought they were going to build on to a 4-1 Italy advantage. And that sequence, in my opinion, set the tone for the entire game. It put them on their heels. And what could have been easily a home game, as we mentioned before, definitely a Puerto Rican partisan crowd looking for the Puerto Rican team to come out swinging and advancing with all the hearts and minds there. Unfortunately for them, Italy would not relent. And we look at this, I mean, we had Italy starter Sam Algagiri, and if you look at him, he's an Angels prospect from Verona who looks at one of the few players on this team. That's been a big narrative of this, who were actually born and raised in Italy on this roster. Everyone's kind of tongue-in-cheek talking about how this is the Italian-American team and all that, and there's the people there, and it is what it is. But Sam Algiri is a guy who actually was born in Verona, and we watched Algiri kind of limit the damage because Puerto Rico wasn't going away quietly. This game was a good game. The only run Puerto Rico managed in the inning was an RBI hit by pitch by Martin Maldonado, which trimmed Italy's lead to 4-2. They left multiple runners stranded, which, again, limited the damage was here. And the inability to convert the rally has been a problem for a lot of these teams. That's a key turning point in this game. As long-term baseball fans, we know when you leave guys on base, I've been discussing that with Team United States. We watch that kind of come back to bite you by the end. And Italy just seized control from there. The 4th inning, Pasquantino drew a walk. And it did something he doesn't usually do. He stole a base. So he's a guy that you're looking at as more a guy who's going to be kind of station to station, maybe take the extra base if he can on an extra base hit. And he was talking about this post-game, saying that the team's celebratory espresso had him running faster than usual. And that's been a big theme here. Talk about vibes above replacement. This Italy team certainly has that in spades. And that stolen base, even though it was unlikely, helped ignite another rally for them. And they loaded the bases, setting the stage for Andrew Fisher, who is a guy who, again, New Jersey born. We talk about the American Italians. He embraces Italian heritage throughout this tournament. He wound up launching a long fly ball to right field. It appeared headed for the wall, but a fan reached out, caught the ball in front of the fence, and the interference ruled the play a 2-run double. This brought the Italy lead to 6-2. And then J.D. DeRazio struck again. Ground rule double down the right field line. 2 more runs across, and then suddenly the score had ballooned to 8-2. Italy appeared to be cruising towards the semifinals, but as I said before, Puerto Rico wouldn't go quietly into that good night. At this point, we watch again. This has kind of been the blueprint for the Italian wins. Build early leads with the aggressive offense and force the other teams to have to come back. And for Puerto Rico, they're, again, as we mentioned, do or die. These are single elimination. You have to win or go home. They put it all out there and went out there and made this a game, because we got a lot of tension in this game returning in the 8th inning with the rally from the Italian bullpen. And you have to find spots to come back in games. And this kind of was a combination of walks, hit batters. Puerto Rico had some situational hitting here, and they got 4 runs here. We have Joe La Sorsa kind of hitting a batter and later threw a wild pitch as the crowd was erupting. That was the other piece of this as we watched for Puerto Rico. We get the gap closing to 8-6, and all of a sudden you're thinking maybe the magic dust is coming off of Team Italy, and that comfortable lead all of a sudden became a tight game. But again, you look at these comebacks, and it maybe just arrived too late because Italy managed to just navigate the unsteady waters here to secure the victory. And you think if Puerto Rico could have gotten these runs a little bit faster, maybe the Italian bullpen couldn't have been able to hold on, but they were able to do it. And I think a lot of this, again, we're going to be talking a lot about Venezuela and what they did and this DR game against the Team USA. This Italian team is a great story. Whether this ends in a couple days against Venezuela or not, I'm going to remember this WBC for this Italian team, among other things for sure. And Francisco Cervelli, there's a lot of, for me, personal guys that I've watched growing up. And Francisco Cervelli, obviously former Yankee catcher. Jorge Posada is a bench coach over there. The stories from Francisco Cervelli were great to hear. He's running a baseball academy in Tuscany, and the things he keeps coming out. And I think the fallout of this, we mentioned this yesterday in the episode about Canada, about the boom we're seeing. Not only the Toronto Blue Jays playing competitive baseball and getting so close to winning a championship, but these things like Team Italy going this far, Canada getting out of the pool play into the quarterfinal round. This has an effect of baseball culture in the country. And Cervelli has been outspoken about this, about the vision of what it looks like to build a stronger baseball culture in Italy. There's been a lot of people joking around. I mean, I mentioned Evan Roberts from WFAN and other people talking about, are people caring about this in Italy, or is this just an American thing? As I mentioned, the Italian-American situation. But there is an attachment that's happening over there. The Italian parliament taking notice of this, making comments about the team, and they're proud of them. You know, and as we said, the roster is primarily composed of players with Italian heritage rather than players raised in the country. There feels like a genuine emotional investment that has been coming from the country. And that's amazing to see. And that is only good for baseball in Italy. And you have the pride for Pasquantino. You see it oozing off of him during this about the significance of wearing the Italian uniform. And just because many members of this team are born and raised in the U.S., they do carry family histories tied to immigration from Italy and the heritage that comes with that. And Pasquantino has been very vocal about this, describing the experience as an opportunity to, for him, honor the generations of family members who came to America, while also in a big way, like Cervelli was referencing before, to help introduce baseball to an audience in Italy that maybe is not familiar. Maybe this makes another generation of baseball fans. And that's what you're looking to do. That's what the international baseball is trying to do here. So whether, again, I'm going to remember things like the espresso shots, the Italian music blasting in the clubhouse, the Armani style home run jacket. How could you forget that? The bottles of wine handed to the post-game MVPs. So again, these are kind of the playful stereotypes from the outside have actually helped build a really strong clubhouse culture for this team. And it's been a lot of fun to watch. And I think this is something unique that the WBC 20 years in, and we were discussing this about the World Cup, being that, you know, coming this year to New York and seeing what they're doing and playing at MetLife, World Cup certainly has a lot of years of head start. 1930 something was when the World Cup started. So we're approaching almost 100 years of FIFA and the World Cup and all the love of country and soccer and all those things. So by the time, you know, when we're long gone and there's 100 years of gap between us and the WBC, will mean something, especially if they continue to build at this pace from where it is from 2006, where it doesn't feel like exhibition games. It certainly feels like it means something. And it starts with players and stories and fan bases like this. And the results for Italy have followed. And Italy, if you look at what they've done, they defeated Team Mexico, they defeated USA, and now they defeated Puerto Rico during the run through the tournament. And they're entering the semifinals as, again, a team that's a great story. But we have to remember, look at the stats. They're one of the more productive offenses in the field that's left here. And the team's ability to score early runs and sustain offensive pressure, you can't dismiss that. That's been a huge defining feature of their undefeated record. And I think it's impossible to ignore. I think when you look at Italy and you think about them as a country, baseball is no doubt a niche sport. There's no doubt about it. We look at soccer and basketball, and you can't forget how big cycling is over there. But when you're looking at this, televised games playing during the evening hours back in Italy, fans gathering in cafes, and you're seeing clips of them watching in restaurants, it's beginning to introduce the sport to a wider audience, and that's having an effect here. And this is a big effect of this, whether Italy wins this WBC or not. I think most people think that they're not, but who would have thought they'd be 5-0 as we sit here? And I think this roster may be unconventional, but it's built largely in a way that's exciting. And, I think the preview of Venezuela and Italy and everyone looking at the path that we've taken there, and for Italy, a country where soccer normally dominates every sports conversation, people are gathering around TVs to watch a baseball team. And that suddenly is something fun about this tournament, how fast it moves. It's just great to see. So we're getting ready. Venezuela, Italy, semifinals. And this is going to pit two of the tournament's most surprising teams against one of the most talented. And I talked about last episode, I should say, that Venezuela and Japan was one of the more genuine, evenly matched games. And I certainly picked Japan to win that game, but Venezuela is star power through and through the lineup. But again, the way Italy has played, there's no reason to believe that they can't go to their first ever WBC championship game. So it's going to be interesting to watch. But let's get into the story that we saw unfold later in the night with the meat of the order.
We have the meat.
All right, so the drama that's been going down here with the WBC, when we talk about the compressed schedule and the way this has worked too, and one of the reasons I'm hopping on here post games for a lot of these, whether it be after the United States games or big games like this, you're compressing an entire season's worth of drama into what feels like one single night, especially in a game like this. And we watched for this game going through really Saturday night, two swings separated by about 20 minutes, changing the direction of this tournament. And that's not even just hyperbolic. This is a true fact where you watch the way this turned on its head. Venezuela eliminating the defending champion Japan with this comeback victory. 8-5 was the final, ending their title defense, sending Venezuela into the WBC semifinals for the first time since 2009. And this win was remarkable. What they were able to do, the power, the resilience, and the type of depth that, again, I talked about this is no surprise. There's a huge amount of talent in this Venezuela lineup, and they're one of the more dangerous offensive teams left in the tournament. There's no doubt about that. So it's not like Venezuela wasn't expected to at least be competitive in this tournament, but anyone going against Japan, especially a team that, let's be honest, hasn't lost since 2017. And when they show that stat, it's just remarkable to think about. We discussed it last night on the episode. I mean, Japan entered the quarterfinal as the 2023 World Baseball Classic champion. And you can make the argument, maybe they are the most structurally complete team in the field. You look at the roster that's blended, not only MLB stars, but the best players from MPB. There's a lot of talent on this roster waiting to be had and waited to be watched all over the place. And they've been the gold standard of the WBC. They're the only three-time champions, 06, 09, 2023. And this is a team that rarely beats itself. You'd have to go out there and everything has to break right for you. The depth, the disciplined offense, holding their composure. And even when they went down, we were watching their bench, watching their bats. There was no panic. And yeah, they weren't able to make the comeback after they gave up the lead, but they're so composed when you're watching this Japanese team in the field. And for 6 innings on Saturday night, it looked like they might be on their way to another deep run. It felt like Venezuela, after Japan took its big swing on them, things started to rival out of control. And all of a sudden, Venezuela was back on its heels. And that's when Japan's at its best. But similar to what we're talking about with Puerto Rico making a comeback against Italy, Venezuela never stopped swinging. And the game, when you set the stage for the game and you're watching, I don't know how anyone's not watching. As a baseball fan, I don't know how someone's not watching this and just eating every second of it up because it's just exciting. Ronald Acuña Jr. leads off the game with a home run, 401-foot drive, right center field, left his bat at 106.2 miles per hour. And this came off of Yamamoto, two brand name players here. We know what Yamamoto's done. 2025 World Series MVP, one of the more accomplished pitchers in the sport as we speak. And man, we talked about the Puerto Rico fans, but the Venezuelan fans packed into Lone Depot Park. They were electric all night. And the Japanese fans were great too. They were loud. This was an atmosphere that could rival any sporting event. Super loud. One of those things, it gives you chills thinking about. And we watched him go out there, do his home run trot, and Venezuela had that 1-0 lead. Like, okay, this is going to be a game. You know, Japan's going to take their punch as well. And they did immediately, doing so and creating really a historic moment. Shohei Ohtani opened the bottom of the first inning with the home run of his own. 427 feet, center field, off the bat for him, 113.6 miles per hour, according to Baseball Savant. And the game was tied at 1-1. The stadium was absolutely electric from that point on. It never really quieted down. And that's great. I mean, if you look at this too, and you can't help but think about baseball being so romantic and tied together, it created kind of an unusual piece of baseball history, because you look at Acuña and Ohtani, former MLB MVP winners, and according to the stats that I'm seeing, there's never been a Major League Baseball game in which two former MVPs hit leadoff home runs at the same game. So if you put the context of the World Baseball Classic behind that, where you have the national pride and, of course, the star power and all the global audiences around watching, maybe that is the perfect encapsulation of what this can create when you have the best players in the world playing in that moment. It was a crazy stat. So it's amazing to watch this game start off, and it never relented. It was a game that was an absolute roller coaster as an objective viewer, something that was just from start to finish a very entertaining product. Game settled after that explosive opening, of course, but Yamamoto, he regrouped after allowing the leadoff home run to Acuña, and he settled into the game. We've seen this version of Yamamoto where maybe in the beginning of his MLB career, there was moments where he would give up the long ball, he would settle in, and he wound up working 4 innings, allowing 2 runs while striking out 5, leaned very heavily on the combination of the splitter and the curveball to keep Venezuela from stringing together any rallies. And Yamamoto limited Venezuela to a lot of scattered contact if you watch the spray chart, and gave Japan really an opportunity to regain control. It felt like he was holding the wheel and being able to drive his car down the road, giving Japan every opportunity to win this game. And Venezuela had the lead again here. Gleyber Torres lined an RBI double left field. Ezequiel Tovar scored the run, which put them ahead 2-1. I want to give a shout out to Devin, because he actually posted pregame 9 hours before pregame about the numbers that Tovar had against Yamamoto. So Tovar came out and had a great game. One of the highlights of Venezuela doing his thing. And for Gleyber Torres, he was as emotional as he's been, very excited during this game. You're seeing these sides of players, whether it be on the DR side of things or guys that are usually a little bit more reserved. And Gleyber has shown spurts of that, of course, his time with the Yankees and now with Detroit, where he's an emotional guy. But the side of Gleyber you're seeing where he seems like he's having a great time certainly was on display here. And for the middle innings is kind of where Japan sees the momentum. And that's when I thought the game was going to slide in their direction and slip away from Venezuela, where Japan broke out against Ranger Suarez, so setting the stage here, Shohei Ohtani reached base, and we have Japan doing what they do. They're applying pressure with the disciplined at bats. And Hiroki Sato, if you guys know, he's the reigning NPB Central League MVP. He delivers a clutch RBI double down the right field line, ties the game 2-2. And again, we're playing this game of back and forth, but it really felt like, despite them, Ohtani answering Acuña and the game settling down, and then even when Venezuela had the lead, it still felt like the momentum was squarely in the camp of Japan. And it kind of spiraled out of control, and it felt like that's where the game was going to go, where the game was tilted directly in their favor, where Shota Morishita, he launched a 3-run home run to left field, scoring Ohtani and Sato, and Japan was up 5-2, and it felt like, okay, game's over. For Morishita, 388 feet, left his bat at 105.7 miles per hour. And the win probability, if you look at if you follow any of those things, MLB.com had it at 80%, and they appeared firmly in control of this game. So you can kind of write it up. We're getting ready for Italy, Japan, and maybe Japan kind of coasts towards the championship. Will it be DR or the United States? That's what's in everybody's head watching this. But for Venezuela, again, they did not go quietly. Give them a lot of credit for staying and doing their thing. And for Morishita, when he hit that home run, you got to remember, he only entered the game where Seiya Suzuki injured his right knee, which is another story. A lot of people discussing that piece. Kyle Teal getting hurt a couple days ago. The injuries in the WBC are going to have a little bit of the reservations for these MLB teams and MLB fans when your players get hurt. So for Seiya Suzuki getting hurt, I hope he's okay. He attempted to steal a base in the first inning, and for the WBC part of this, it was just about reshuffling the lineup, and that's the only reason Morishita was in the game at all. But Seiya Suzuki is a guy that's going to be relied on heavily for the Chicago Cubs, and they need him to be okay. And for the injury to happen here, it's not a good thing for the WBC. It does happen. It's baseball. But for people, that's what they're going to lean on. For the people that are a little bit hesitant about wanting their fans to, or their players to play, it's going to be a big thing. You're going to see it all over the place. You're going to see it on social media. We said the same thing with the Mets and Diaz. But again, watching the electric moments, I believe it outweighs the risk to have these players play and have these moments. And again, as I mentioned, Morishita's in the game for that reason. That's the reason why he was there. And it looked like Japan was settling into that pattern of what we've seen. I used the term boa constrictor for the U.S. lineup, and it's very similar to this Japanese team. The length of the lineup, how deep they are, it squeezes the life out of everybody, where it kind of models what they've done every WBC. For the ones they won and even the other ones where they lost and went deep, you get early pitching stability, followed by just chipping away and having a disciplined approach offensively. And it looked like this was going to be the formula. Type it in and figure it out, and the code goes through. But the problem, as I mentioned before, for Japan is that Venezuela's lineup never stopped attacking. And we watched this lineup for Venezuela. And one of the reasons I looked at this matchup, as I said yesterday in episode 152, that Venezuela and Japan was a premier matchup is because you look at the explosive offensive talent in that lineup for Venezuela. Acuña, Torres, Jackson Chourio, Maikel García, Wilyer Abreu. This is a group capable of generating a lot of offense. And you have to look at that lineup as, okay, if they can get some good pitching, when Rangers certainly can do that, they'll have the ability to be in any game. And we watched that resurface in the fifth inning. Jackson Chourio gets on base. Maikel García launched a 2-run home run to left center. Man, 406 feet with 104.1 miles per hour exit velocity. And the lead was cut to 5-4. It's like, we have a game here. 5-4. It felt like, just as I said before, when it was 5-2, all the momentum felt like it was Japan's camp, that they were going to lull the rest of this game to sleep. Not the case here. 5-4. The Venezuelan fans were going crazy, and it changed the atmosphere, where they were loud still during the game at 5-2, but it felt like it was possible at this point. And I think a lot of the fans and the team knew. The reaction for the Maikel García home run was electric. And we're going to talk about more of the electricity to come here. And even though Japan still had the lead, the lineup that had become to chip away at the deficit, it felt like the momentum was shifting. And that's important. There's an unspoken thing that lives in the air of baseball games, where this momentum shifts in a direction. And this is all just sort of this cat and mouse game that was playing between two heavyweight teams. And this decisive moment, sixth inning, wasn't waiting long for it. As we mentioned before, Ezequiel Tovar doing exactly what he's done all game, reaching base. Gleyber Torres followed with a single to left field. And at this point, Venezuela's, what's the win probability? And you can see it go as you're watching the game. Their win probability climbed back to above 50%, which is interesting to watch as we continue to go back and forth with whatever they use to calculate these win probabilities. It's very fascinating to watch. And I know ESPN, during their broadcast, they put it in the corner of the screen for the national games. That was always interesting to me. Japan turned into wanting to stop the rally. Hiromi Itoh, he's the reigning Sawamura Award winner, which is Japan's equivalent of the Cy Young Award. He enters the game. Wilyer Abreu, as I mentioned, Boston Red Sox. And maybe you can say this is the defining swing of this entire quarterfinal round so far. He crushes a 3-run home run to right field, travels 409 feet, leaving his bat at 108.1 miles per hour, and the ball landed in the upper deck. Electric. I mean, the scoreboard flipped to 7-5 in advantage of Venezuela, and just the scene. Talk about just celebrating and having the feeling of watching something special. He exploded out of the batter's box. He's pumping both fists, launching his bat, not just a bat flip. He launched the bat into the air. He was celebrating the entire trip around the bases. The entire Venezuelan dugout was erupting. They're all over the place. It just was magic. And, oh, yeah, we still have the rest of the game to play. And you look at the win probability, again, who cares about it, but nearly 78% at that point. So, again, Venezuela had to get the final outs, had to navigate through this lineup. It's only 2 runs. We've seen them be able to put up big runs. If you look at the power in that Japanese lineup, the pitching staff navigated the final innings pretty carefully. They prevented the biggest thing, was preventing Japan from having the rally. And I think at any point, you get a couple of guys on, you get the big hit, it could definitely turn into a big rally. And then we also have the Venezuela adding the insurance run, which was huge. 8-5. The bullpen had some breathing room entering the 9th inning. And we have Japan's final opportunity, and there was going to be some drama to it. 2 outs in the 9th. Shohei Ohtani stepped to the plate, and he was the final chance to extend the game. Maybe he would have wanted more the opportunity to come up as the tying run, but unfortunately it wasn't to be. Well, for Japan fans. And like, again, this is exciting stuff about international baseball where Daniel Palencia comes out there. He attacks the zone, forces Ohtani into a routine pop-up. And, man, even when it's in the air, you watch just the ball as it descends down and gets the glove closed on it. Just the pulsing of that crowd of watching this. It was, in a lot of ways, the most significant victory in Venezuela's World Baseball Classic history. There's no doubt about it. But just the atmosphere in the immediate, it's hard not to just appreciate what we were able to see. And it's just electric. Fan base was just so appreciative of what they saw. And it happens. And if there was a long series, this was a 7-game series, Japan undoubtedly, to me, would win 4 games out of 7 against Venezuela. But this is what happens when you have this March Madness style portion of this tournament where it's win or go home. And at any point, any of these teams could lose, especially with the talent when you're down to the final amount of teams. And we are now down to Final 4. And for Japan, eulogizing their run here, as I mentioned, it's the first time they lost a WBC game since 2017. And that's baked in a little bit because they didn't play in 2020, but went undefeated in 2023 when they won, and then was undefeated until this point when they got over here to the single elimination games. So this is a rare thing to do for Japan to lose. And for them, I mean, there's no doubt that this program's exactly where it needs to be. Approaching 2029, they'll probably be the favorite again. One of the more balanced teams right now in the league or in the WBC field. And for them, I mean, this turns the whole tournament on its head because removing them removes that what many analysts were saying is the best pitching depth in the tournament, and their track record in the WBC is unmatched. So this throws everything on the head. The 3 championships and the reputation of playing nearly flawless baseball under pressure. Now it's just like, who's going to win? And it's wide open for maybe a lot of people look at the finish of the USA and the DR of whoever wins that's going to have a walk towards the championship. But I would not sleep on Italy or Venezuela as well. This is not the way people had it going. I think most people predicted it would be. I mean, I think the semifinals on the US and DR side, you would predict that would be the finals, but semifinals, I should say. But Venezuela and Italy was not what anyone had on their bingo card. And if you did, play a lotto ticket. So amazing stuff. Maikel Garcia's home run reopened that door, and Wilyer Abreu's blast is going to be something that Venezuelan baseball fans are going to be watching for a very long time. It just kicked that door right off the hinges. So now Venezuela moves on to Italy, as we mentioned, semifinal round, Monday night in Miami. And this pits one of the tournament's deepest lineups against Italy's still a surprising team. I understand they're undefeated and they've been the breakout story. But this is going to be one of those stories that, again, can Italy continue with the magic dust, or is Venezuela going to be able to outlast them and use the momentum? Because that's outside of this. There's a story to the momentum they built from the win over Japan. So for Venezuela, no doubt about it, this represents more than just advancing for them. And look at them. I mean, this is a country that long defined by its baseball talent. I mean, we look at them. The Venezuelan players have dominated MLB for decades. We got MVPs that are Venezuelan, Cy Young winners that are Venezuelan, all-stars across generations that are from this country. And their 2009 semifinal appearance was their best finish in the event. Let's see if they're able to get past this and be where they are. So you have to imagine with Acuña continuing to set the tone, and Gleyber Torres and Maikel Garcia and Jackson Chourio, like, this is a team that is built that could potentially walk away and win this WBC. They find themselves 2 wins away from the country's first WBC championship. Just an absolute electric atmosphere that I texted Devin. I'm like, we got to get on here and discuss this because it's fleeting. That's the thing about this WBC. It goes so fast. As I mentioned, the finals would take place on Tuesday. We're now recording on Sunday, and we're waiting for this DR-US game. Monday, we'll have this Italy-Venezuela game, and then no warming up in the bullpen, straight to Tuesday where the champion is crowned. So a lot of great stuff. But we're going to be talking about the semifinals. Let's get into the preview of what we know. We talked a little bit about last night, but give you guys what we know now about the DR and Team USA coming up tonight. All right, so looking at the Dominican Republic and Team USA, again, to set the stage here, the Dominican Republic is coming in undefeated, 4-0, overpowered opponents with the 41-10 run differential, things we talked about last night, averaging more than 10 runs per game through the first 4 contests of this tournament. And again, the lineup is just unreal, whether it's Juan Soto or Vlad Jr. or Julio or Fernando Tatis Jr., Manny Machado. They've combined to just be this relentless back and forth. For USA, we know their complicated route to the semifinals, where they suffered a surprising loss to Italy during pool play and then survived that 5-3 quarterfinal victory over Canada, which is a game in which the USA built the 5-0 lead. Let's not forget that. We discussed it. Go back in the archives if you want a recap of that episode and of that game. But I think one of the more important structural factors into this game is the pitch limit system, because as we said before, Paul Skeens getting on the bump for the US. As we know, there's also the consequence of like opening days a few weeks away, and these MLB teams don't want their guys going out there and being overworked. But there is a pitch limit system that a lot of people forget because it's designed to protect pitchers during this tournament. So they're using the escalating limits thing, which is depending on the round. So back in the first round, pitchers were limited to 65 pitches in the first round, 80 pitches in the quarterfinals, and 95 pitches in both the semis and the championship game. So let's just say a pitcher reaches the pitch limit during a bat, is allowed to finish that hitter, but then he must be removed from the game. And they're also enforcing mandatory rest rules that can dramatically influence bullpen strategy. So any pitcher who throws 50 or more pitches must rest for at least 4 days before appearing again, which plays a huge part in some of these teams that are just in must-win games. Of course, you're going to empty the bullpen, empty the pitching staff you have, and if you happen to get out and you don't have anybody available, they may not be able to pitch for the rest of the tournament. So if a pitcher throws 30 to 49 pitches, they must take at least 1 full day of rest. And additionally, as we've seen throughout this tournament, they can't appear on 3 consecutive days, or anyone who throws on 2 straight days must rest the following day. So those rules do matter enormously for this matchup because they can limit how long Paul Skeens can be in there, how long realistically they can be in the game. Most starters in this tournament are still going to be working in that 4 to 5 inning range. So again, the bullpen management becomes the central strategic element of this game, and the offense is going against them. And again, Team USA heading the ball to Paul Skeens. What else can you say about him? One of the more dominant young pitchers in the sport. And he might be the most intimidating arm in the entire tournament as far as pitchers go. And we watched what he did against Mexico, through 4 scoreless innings, allowing just 1 hit, striking out 7 batters. And we watched him just hit 100 miles per hour just effortlessly. The wipeout slider, it's just Paul Skeens is just a cheat code. And he's going to be at least having a few go-arounds with one of the better lineups he's ever going to face. And a lot of people, if you look at just this lineup in general, between both sides, people are saying that the US and the DR, you'd see some all-star games that don't have this much talent. And that might be an exaggeration, but there is a significant amount of talent on both sides of the ball here. Juan Soto, Vlad Jr., we know how good they are. They're going to extend at bats, they're going to try to force Paul Skeens into uncomfortable counts. And I think for me, watching as a baseball fan, if Paul Skeens can provide 4 or 5 effective innings while limiting the Dominican offense to, let's just say, 1 run or fewer, I think that's exactly what Team USA needs. They need to stabilize this early, and they need to delay the exposure of the bullpen, because once Skeens exit, the dynamic of the matchup does shift. Because for the Dominican Republic, their offensive structure is built around having explosive middle innings. They're just able to weather the storm and just beat teams up in the middle of the game. And their lineup does not rely solely on sustained rallies. They're not just built on, we're going to have 1 rally and then we're going to lean on that for the rest of the game. I mean, they have some quick bursts of power. If you watch how all these games have played out throughout this tournament, they've clustered a lot of things together and said, for them, a single mistake from a reliever can instantly just turn this into a lopsided game. And they're coming off the mercy win over Korea. This is a team that's just like, we can beat anybody. We can hang with everybody. And this is particularly important against Team USA because the American bullpen, as we've seen, has been pretty inconsistent throughout this tournament. Again, Mason Miller is a guy who is lights out. He's the one that finished the game against Canada. I mean, outside of him, I mean, there have been stretches where command has wavered and the opposing hitters have created traffic on bases. And as we said, they've only lost one game in this tournament, so it's not like we're sitting here and saying that they've blown games. But the level of competition goes up every single time. And against the Dominican lineup, those moments can quickly escalate into multiple runs. And that's the thing we're looking at here, where they've shown all tournament the ability to do that. Through 4 games, we mentioned 41 runs, more than any other offense in the tournament. And they've done it against all different types of pitchers. It doesn't really matter. So I think for them, the Dominican lineup generates offense through the depth, and the American roster is structured around pockets. We've seen this before, where they need to capitalize when they have runners in scoring position, but there's pockets of certain parts of this lineup that produce quick scoring bursts similar to the DR, but they have to be able to get from the heart of the lineup, get guys on base, and get into a multi-running rally in one swing. And I think for Judge, too, we need a big game from Judge. We know what he's been able to do with hitting the ball at the ballpark. Schwarber, same thing. If they need to go out into a slugfest on both sides, or maybe be able to pile on the runs against Severino, let Skeen shut them down for 4 innings, and that's the formula to win the game. I think Harper may be the most intriguing figure in this as well. People are calling for him to be sitting during this because of how he struggled. But you look at his track record, few players in modern baseball produce more dramatic postseason moments than Harper. And I know that's not the stat guy thing to say, but there's no doubt about that. You look at Bryce Harper, and games with elimination stakes tend to bring out maybe his most confident swing. And maybe that's the bold thing that Mark DeRosa and that U.S. coaching staff looking at. Yeah, I know he hasn't been the best player here, but we know the pedigree of a guy like Bryce Harper and when in moments where it matters. But I think inevitably, if you have a rooting interest watching this game, and I'm not sure how far everyone goes with this, personally as a baseball fan, obviously rooting for the United States in the own way, but rooting for Italy for the story. But I'm rooting for just good baseball, rooting for the WBC to be effective and something people want to see. And that's what they've done. They've already won the hearts and minds of everybody, in my opinion. If you're a baseball fan, you've been entertained from start to finish. For the way we've seen things go down, it's just been an unbridled success from start to finish. And for Team USA, their turbulent path, I mean, we have to remember there's pieces of this. If they were to go down to Dominican Republic, and it depends on how it goes down. If it's a heartbreaking game, if they wind up getting embarrassed, I think some of the warts of the Mark DeRosa mismanaging the tiebreaker situation comes out in the postmortem of this game. It depends on how things go down. The way Japan lost, it's like you get up and figure it out next time you're up here. Nothing to be embarrassed about by losing to Venezuela in the way you did. But for Team USA, they better come out prepared and better come out playing the game effectively like they should against a team like Dominican Republic that's going to do everything right and put pressure on you in every single facet of the game. It means playing crisp defense. It means executing your pitches. It also means coming up with runners in scoring position and finding a way to get it done. And of course, the winner of this game is going to advance to the championship matchup against the survivor of Venezuela and Italy. It's going to be great. This is the last meeting of the traditional powerhouses on the bracket. So enjoy it. And because of the pitch limits and the bullpen management and the concentration of elite hitters on both sides, I think this game is going to be decided not by overall roster strength, but by really a few specific moments. And some of the things I pinpointed was you need to get Skeens in a big moment, striking out guys, runners on base. You need to find maybe a hanging breaking ball that either on by the other side, Soto or Judge, launches into the Miami night. And I think a bullpen matchup in the 7th inning when the pitch limits force managers to make difficult decisions is going to come up big here. Maybe somewhere between the first pitch and the final swing is going to be just exciting to watch. I think the entire baseball classic is going to be just on the line here, and we're creating moments in real time. That's the best part of all this. And we're getting ready and carrying the weight of the championship expectations for both these teams. Both these teams had that going into this tournament. As I mentioned, they're tournament powerhouses. So this is something to enjoy. And there's all these subplots. Soto, Judge, DR versus versus the United States, powerhouses, the party atmosphere the Dominican Republic brings to the table, and the stoic business-like nature of the United States team. Oh yeah, Cal Riley not shaking hands with his teammates from the Seattle Mariners, which that came out again. I know Josh Naylor came out and diffused it, but we talked about that where Josh Naylor didn't try to shake Cal Riley's hand. And I listened to the Brady Farkas episode about it, and he's very frustrated with all that story. And we'll see if it continues going into it, but that's another subplot. The WBC, in the short time it's been gripping us in the 11 days at this point, has created all these great moments. And it's just been a lot of fun to watch as it continues to take hold. But again, I hope you guys enjoy the games. Devin and I think we'll be recording tomorrow for the AL NL Central. So stay tuned for that. Either way, we're dropping them very, very soon. They're our next 2 divisions we're dropping. And following the Dominican Republic and US, I will probably be doing another post-game quick, discussing the fallout of it, and then probably a post-game, why not, for the final. It's been a lot of fun. I do appreciate you guys listening and enjoying what we're doing over here. Again, Devin and I are always around doing the MLB coverage, college baseball, fantasy baseball. The WBC thing's kind of a special thing we've been doing. So I hope you guys enjoyed some of the coverage. I want to give you guys all the context of all the stats, all the things, and all the stuff going on. Again, if you guys want to support our show, make sure you're following at Tablesetters Pod on IG and on X. If you've been enjoying the podcast, take a moment, please. Leave a 5-star review wherever you listen. It really helps more baseball fans discover the show. We'll be back talking all things baseball. Hope you guys continue to enjoy the World Baseball Classic. And until then, we'll talk to you after.